Hello, I'm Dr. James Bogash, Master of Health and Longevity and creator of Modern Health Myths. And today we're going to touch a little bit on, um, quite a bit, on some factors of COVID. And part of the reason why some of this isn't going to be new news to you, some of it's going to be a little bit shocking, but the reality is we seem to think that COVID, the fear, I think, stems from this idea that we have no idea how it strikes. It's going to be like lightning, and everybody's running around with a metal rod, and we have no idea who it's going to strike. That is not at all the case. We have a very good idea of who is at risk of both COVID infections and severe outcomes, hospitalizations, and deaths. Top of the list is most people understand by now. If you don't, you've been living under a rock or in a cave, which might not be all that unlikely given the quarantine and social isolation, but it has to do with obesity. And overall, obesity increases rate of severe COVID by upwards of 340%. Like that's that's a major player. And for everybody who looks at the U.S. and says we're doing awful, we need to really look at obesity levels. And there is a very clear association between obesity levels, usually looking at the BMI cutoff of 25 in a country, and the risk of or the deaths per 100 per million residents. So to give you an idea, Japan, which has a really low BMI despite an older population. So remember, we have our older people that are terrified, and yet our younger people who are overweight are less scared, but maybe they should be more scared. So the Japan has a death rate of about 13 per 1 million. Only 27% of the population is considered overweight by BMI standards. Looking at the United Kingdom, and U.S. falls real closely into that, where somewhere 63% of their population is considered overweight, you have 639 uh, deaths per million. So I don't know, some 300%, 300 times, 400, almost 500, almost like little under five, almost 500% higher in UK versus Japan, and that correlates very well with obesity. So again, those graphs looking at deaths per million in obesity is really strongly associated. The authors of this particular study point out that as a result of the quarantine, a lot of people's weight has gone up, making the likelihood of more severe COVID even greater in the future, which is something I've been saying all along. The challenge is that it doesn't seem like people are that concerned about obesity, or at least not concerned enough to make a difference. It is a huge factor with COVID that you can control, and you can control tomorrow. And this has to do with fasting blood sugar. Most of us know that diabetes plays a role in COVID cases, but what you may not have heard is that a poorly controlled diabetic with higher blood sugar is at vastly different risk than a well-controlled diabetic with low blood sugar. But what about non-diabetics with blood sugar higher than it should be? I hope you're sitting down for this one because it's going to be a little bit shocking. And so researchers looked at a small group of 293 people who were non-diabetic, and they looked at how much fasting blood sugar played a role in severe or critical cases of COVID. And they kind of broke the blood glucose down to 85. So basically 85 or below, so a better blood sugar, potentially even a little low. 85 to 94, which is probably closer to ideal. 104 to 35, and 135 and higher. So considered hyperglycemia, too much blood sugar. And a lot of poorly controlled diabetics hang out in 135 all the time. So what they found when compared to the range of, they call it a J-shaped association. So at the lower end of the spectrum, with too low of blood sugar, those people had a ready? 2,533% higher risk of severe or critical complications. Um, then at the 85 to 94 is where the association was compared to. So basically zero, if we will, goes up to 313 for 104. So over 100. So this is when we're starting to become concerned from a medical standpoint. So 104 to 135, 1,059% increased risk of severe or critical COVID. Here's where you need to sit down. The 135 or higher, the risk of severe critical COVID was 3,893. We could round that up to 4,000% higher risk of severe COVID from something that you can change tomorrow. I can't stress that enough, that how much the decisions we make play a role in outcomes with this. This could not be clearer or more educational as far as what you need to do to control your risk of COVID. Do have to add that one of the suggestions, one of the concerns in this study is that a lot of doctors are using dexamethasone or low-dose steroids to help with people who are more severe, and that will raise up blood sugar. So there's a possibility that that may play a role. Even if it is, it's not going to have that much of an effect on the people, and it wouldn't have an effect on the other side of the J-shaped association. So certainly the use of steroids can raise blood sugar, and it may play a role, but not enough to account for the just dire numbers of people who have a blood sugar over 135. Beyond the scope of this video to talk about how to manage blood sugar, but those choices are completely within your grasp to change your blood sugar tomorrow and lower your risk of severe COVID tomorrow, all by the choices that you make. So, as always, I'll post a link to these two particular studies in the comment section. Make sure you share this video with somebody who you think has too high a blood sugar, and subscribe to the channel.